Wherever you set that, I'm going to bring power to it here in a moment.
Okay. Do the best we can with going live with that.
That'll work.
So at least we'll have something.
Is that streamed to YouTube or whatever?
Is that streamed to YouTube?
Yes.
Yes.
No, it should go to Ray-Pec activities.
No, it is. I mean, I got walls of space closed on it, and I think you do that. Even walls.
Oh, goodness gracious. Press play, see what happens.
It just said press play, see what happens.
Okay, we are live.
Okay.
Okay, good evening. We apologize for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. We want to make sure everyone has access. We will go ahead and get this meeting called to order with roll call, please.
Paul Kaufman.
Here.
Billy Key.
Here.
Bill Lowe.
Here.
Aaron Howard.
Here.
Jay York. Here. Ruth Johnson.
Here. All right, we're going to go ahead and get a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So move.
Is there a second? Second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. On to the schools update. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for being here tonight and for those who are watching and listening online. The board truly appreciates the 1,112 parents, 344 secondary staff, and the 2,340 secondary students who gave us their feedback for tonight's discussion and took the time to do that. The board has a report of over 200 pages to help prepare for this meeting tonight. We fully acknowledge that no matter what you believe the solution is, people are very passionate on every side. And so we thank everyone for giving us their input and their thoughts on this. On to Dr. Slater.
Yes, thank you, Board President Johnson. Thank you very much. At your February meeting, and I'll just do slide 2 here. At the February meeting, you instructed your administration to prepare information for review that includes several items, one of which is an assessment of the current hybrid model, the impact of COVID-19 vaccinations for staff, and what would be required to change the learning model at the secondary level if more in-person days were desired. The report that you've had for several days summarizes the advantages and complexities of changing the learning model at this point in time, and includes information from a survey of Ray-Pec students, parents, and staff members in our secondary schools. To echo what the president said, close to 4,000 surveys were received, over 200 pages of written comments that I know you have had the access to for a period of a week or so, have been forwarded to you. Once again, as the president said, there's no right or wrong in our movement forward from this point forward. I think Ray-Pec has done an outstanding job thanks to its patience and grace on the part of its students, its staff, and its parents to this point, and how we've handled this pandemic. Passion on both sides of the issue. As you know, it's a difficult decision. Our role for you is to help you in the decision-making process. And so the roadmap tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about our current situation, take a look at our current data as it stands with the pandemic. Dr. Volker and his team have been working on the advantages and complexities to share with you concerning changing learning modes at this point. Want to briefly go over the survey results with you. And you've also asked for a synopsis of what some area school districts are doing around this, and I want to share that with you as well. So without further ado, interrupt us at any time because I want this to be a question and answer and an open discussion instead of a presentation as we move forward. So since our February meeting, we've had some things that have changed, and most significantly, Governor Parsons announced that Tier 3 vaccinations would begin March 15th, as yesterday. Tier 3 includes education staff. As a result, there is an increase of availability of vaccines in the area, and through a partnership with Cass Regional Medical Center, Ray-Pec will host a vaccination clinic for its staff members on March the 26th, and the second one, dose B, has been administered on April the 16th. Because the vaccinations are open to Tier 3, we have had several education staff members take advantage and be able to get vaccinated ahead of that March 26th date. But those that haven't, we have a March 26th date set aside for staff vaccinations here in Ray-Pec. As a side note, we are also hosting Strasbourg and as Midway in that, in Pleasant Hill as well, in the vaccination efforts. So we're really reaching out to those districts as well. Positive cases of COVID-19 continue to decline across the region in Cass County and within the Ray-Pec School District. As you know, we currently have our schools in the hybrid learning model, where our secondary students are in person 2 days a week and learn in a virtual format 3 days per week. Our elementary school students, as you know, have been in person learning mode for 5 days a week. We have complemented all of these efforts with a Viper program for those students who wanted to go full-time virtual. There are strict adherence to COVID mitigation measures while students are on campus. And while the instances that you're going to see here in some data of COVID-19 isolations and quarantine have fluctuated over time within the district, we overall have experienced very positive results in limiting the number of classroom or school closings due to the virus. In fact, to date, no grade level or school-wide temporary closures have been experienced at the secondary school level. So I think that is definitely a cause for celebration. I have a couple of graphs that I do want to show you about our recent experiences. This goes back to the first part of January, and what you're seeing here is the moving 7-day average of students and staff quarantined due to in-school exposure among all of our Ray-Pec schools. I think the takeaway from this graph is that our experiences have improved over time to the point where our 7-day moving average is below 5 students per day, or 5 staff members per day as well. So we have different, very significant change in our experiences and a very positive change over the past several weeks. This graph here shows the Cass County situation since January the 1st, and with the trend line fitted there. You can see that the number of positive COVID-19 cases across the county has decreased over time. And just to be transparent with the data, you can slice and dice this in any way you would like to. If we were to look at a more recent snippet of time frame, like say from March 1st on, you would see a line that was more flat. But when we go back and look at the line since January the 1st, there's a significant decrease over time in Cass County in the number of cases that are positive. Dr. Volker is going to come and talk to you about changing learning modes. This is a question that back at our February meeting that you asked specifically about a possible transition date, some of the challenges, advantages to doing that, and some of the current plans for some other activities. Dr. Volker.
All right, good evening, everybody. So looking at a possible transition date and transition back, staff have discussed various options to transition to more in-person learning if requested by the board. Admin believes a transition to full return for secondary students on April 12th is attainable. We would need some calendar modifications to do that. Staff would request the use of April 5th, 6th, and 9th to restructure classroom space and prepare instructional activities to build classroom culture and cohesion. April 5th, just looking at the calendar, is already a professional development day. April 6th is election day. And the 9th is a Friday. That would already be a virtual day. So April 6th would be the one that would be some instructional shift if we were requested to move to more asynchronous virtual learning, so the staff could work on that transfer or transition back. April 7th and 8th then would be the final A-Day and B-Days for the 2020-21 school year. If we transition back, secondary learning would continue in a 4-day-a-week in-person format, with Friday being reserved for virtual instruction. Students in quarantine would then receive instruction through the campus platform and have to submit a work through that platform electronically, obviously, as they go. Truly, there are definitely some challenges with transitioning back, so that is the next piece. Physical distancing was really the goal when we transitioned to our current A and B day hybrid format. So cutting the number of students in half, obviously you have an opportunity to space students very differently in your learning environment when you only have half of them there. That truly would not be possible if we return back to that 4-day week, just as a matter of course and structure. So for example, we would have to go back to using the cafeteria at the high school for lunch. Always return back to our normal, I'm not going to say crowded, just full state in many of our secondary schools. And that would be how our physical distancing, that would not be a process that we could truly follow. We would do the best that we could in that manner. Class size would be a concern when we're looking at some of our courses at Ray-Pec High School and East Middle School. Looking at South Middle School, just the enrollment number is smaller there, and size-wise, when we come back, we'd probably be able to distance fairly well. Our class size wouldn't be as large. Just an example, 6 to 7% of our courses at Ray-Pec High School would have class size concerns if students return in full. These concerns would be addressed by splitting these classrooms into groups or finding larger spaces in the building to accommodate the number of students. Additional staff needed to supervise would have to come from other areas or assignments. So if we had to split into 2 groups to use 2 rooms or use a larger space, we have supervision issues. So we'd have to look at administration, substitute teachers in many situations to help us try and ensure that all our students are supervised appropriately. Also, many courses at Ray-Pec High School will be at or near capacity, requiring virtual students to stay in the learning mode they are now. I think there might be an impression that we could allow Viper students to transition back if we come to this new model, and we do not think that would be possible. We think that would be very difficult. There'd be no transfers allowed between in-person classes and Viper or between Viper and in-person classes. So that's just something important for the board to know. Potential for more quarantines. When you bring more students into close proximity and you have positive cases that do arise, you absolutely would have a contact tracing situation that could potentially result in quite a few more quarantines. So I just think it's important for us to note that. Also, staff with vaccines do not fall outside the CDC quarantine requirements until 2 weeks after their final dose. So if you're following our timeline and vaccination process, that would be April 30th, according to the district vaccination schedule. So we could still have quite a few of our staff members that have to quarantine in exposure situations, and that would be after the vaccination process. We're looking at May, where that possibly wouldn't be as large a concern. Just upfront. Some instructional disruptions. Administration has had a lot of conversations with the need to redevelop classroom norms and expectations. We spend, at the secondary level as well, quite a bit of time setting up our classrooms, our structures, and kind of building cohesion with our learning environments. And just as a reminder, because these 2 students have been with the same teacher, that's still not the same class. When you bring them together, there will need to be some work on working together, getting to know, and working with the structure of the full environment. So I thought administration definitely in this conversation wanted the board to be aware of that. I think I'm going to say it now. I was going to say it later on. In the end, we absolutely feel confident to be able to accomplish learning at a high level for our students, whatever is decided tonight, and whatever process, whatever structure the board sees fit. Administration, staff, our students working together. We have an amazing school district, and we will do the best we can in all situations. So we just wanted to present you with an honest assessment of the challenges in the return, knowing that there'll probably be more than that when we're talking about academic cohesion, instructional cohesion, but I know our staff are extremely hardworking and we'll do the best we can to support them. So any questions just about what I spoke to so far before I go on to some plans for graduation, prom, summer school?
Do you feel that the transition would be any different than transitioning from summer to the first few weeks of school?
Just because that is a very normal process for our students and our teachers and an everyday yearly cycle, I think it would be absolutely be a greater challenge now. Not that we couldn't do it, but I do believe this would be different than the start of a new school year. Or it could be similar in some ways, being that the teachers will need to spend that amount of time coalescing, bringing back, building classroom culture. And in the beginning of the year, we sometimes forget that dedicated time is spent to do that. And we're talking about a finite amount of time left in the school year. Our teachers will have to focus on that in some aspects if we transition back. And knowing what we've suggested April 12th, there's just only so much time that we're talking about. And we're President Johnson, we are transitioning into assessment season. We'll be spending a lot of time on those processes that are required by the state and have not been forgiven, although that would have been nice. But those processes are still required. They're not answering my calls or texts anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But that's something that we're going to have to do and transition back to. So a lot of our time will be spent in that capacity, whatever we decide.
We also still have our end-of-course exams. None of that's been changed.
Correct.
Well,
Correct.
What's the difference between going back now and you spoke of like having teacher shortages because some of them are teaching Viper versus coming back next year? Viper's not going anywhere. We're still going to have Viper teachers, and I know numbers will probably be down for Viper, but speak a little bit to shortages now versus whenever we go back. Are we going to have enough teachers then?
We definitely have the luxury there is time to plan and reallocate teachers across both programs. In this, we don't think we're not changing any of our Viper students. So those teachers allocated, those FTEs, full-time equivalencies, they're already allocated, will need to stay there. So next year, when we get our final enrollment numbers, we'll be able to go to that staff and reallocate them back to the high school and spread them out evenly across all the courses, which simply in the master schedule switch from A day to B day to now wouldn't be possible. You cannot simply reconstruct the master schedule at a time in April. I promise you, it is incredibly complex. So we don't have the staff to transition back to build sections because those kids are staying in Viper. So when we bring the A day, B day back, we've got many environments that either through classroom space, just simple enrollment, we're not going to be able to facilitate one environment. I hope that answered your question.
And I'm sorry, could you explain what the 4-day week would look like again?
If we transport fully in person, we would just run a straight Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4-day, 7-period day. That's what we're looking at the high school, running a traditional day, and then Friday would be virtual instruction, mainly asynchronous.
And explain asynchronous.
Oh, thanks, sorry. Asynchronous, the majority of that would be posted in their learning management system. Students access it. We use Friday, and we still plan to use Friday for some interventions, some specific support, some one-on-ones, opportunities for students to engage directly with their teacher. So we'll probably still want to continue those things. So most of our assignments, we imagine on Friday, would be asynchronous. There are some teachers that, through what they're doing, they'll want to have maybe more live opportunities on Friday, but I'm guessing not the vast majority.
And the Fridays, we had expanded what we were doing on Fridays a few months back. Is that right?
Well, we've definitely added some for the elementary level. We've expanded Friday interventions, Friday remediation opportunities for our kids who are struggling in the hybrid. So that's what we've expanded. Provided transportation for that, done some in person.
And so have we seen an increase in the number of students taking advantage of that?
That can ebb and flow. It's probably an honest answer. And sometimes it really is getting them in there. Now, the students and the teachers that have participated in that have really had some positive feedback. But once the disengagement has occurred in general regarding that, sometimes it's very hard to get those students back engaged.
Also, it's interesting in the comments, and I read all 217 pages of it. Many of the students, and I was based on the seniors, wanted to keep status quo. As they said, we've finally gotten in a routine, we're getting close to the end of our year. And just another disruption they fear would just turmoil everything all over again for them. They said we're already experiencing not having our prom or graduation or all of that being canceled from last year and not this year as well. So there was a lot of student input that said that they wanted to keep the status quo, which I was kind of surprised about. I thought they would want to be back more. And they do, but they also understand that the consistency is important as well.
There are definitely a lot of complexities to this situation. There's no doubt about that. Okay.
One more question. With the hybrid model, it seems to put a little more stress, pressure on teachers that, they're doing both. If we go back full time, do you think that would relieve some of that? Or would it be more stress and pressure for them?
I worry that it wouldn't change it much because that you do a virtual instruction is often your A-day plan, and then you have your students on B-day, and you're developing that plan for both. It really is the quarantine numbers that would concern me, and the increase and the stress on the teachers trying to provide an educational, the education to the quarantine students. If that number increased significantly, I think that could be a true stressor. Any change causes stress. We as just individuals and human beings, consistency as much as possible. That's why this whole pandemic has been so difficult on all of us. This has caused change across all aspects, but change is hard. But our staff would have become acclimated and do the best they can.
Dr. Volker,
Yes.
go back to the hybrid and our Fridays. Comment a little bit on the changes that we've made since August to address some of the struggles that our kids were having.
Mhm.
And, for the most part, some of them are efforts on part of our teachers to reach out on Fridays to help.
Yeah, we've had an amazing amount of communication from our staff to our families, intervention opportunities, virtual intervention, in-person intervention. We've provided transportation for students that are struggling to bring them back in, along with meals and other supports for our hybrid students in those situations that are willing to come to the building. We've offered opportunity for them. Now, granted, those were targeted opportunities. Those were students who were significantly struggling. That wasn't offered to all students, so I want to be perfectly transparent in that. But that has seemed to help. It really has. It is, as I've discussed with the board many times, our instructional struggles at the highest level have been with our virtual students who have completely disengaged. That's been our peak level of instructional struggle. And if I could fix that.
And to clarify, if we went to a 4-day, they would not be returning.
No.
I don't know if this is the right time, but, we had discussions in board meeting last week about next year's budget of specifically targeting resources next year for these issues.
Absolutely. I think we'll have a lot of work to do across all our student body to ensure that wherever they are in their current learning, we are ensuring that they are either on grade level or above. That will be our great challenge that I think up front shouldn't be looked at as a one summer or one school year. I think we set a long-term plan. We look at the data we need to look at, and we target their improvement.
And so, as Ruth mentioned, so at our last board budget work session, we had talked about at our next meeting having, not this one, the next one, having some creative, maybe outside the box ideas from administration about, if we expended some significant funds to help with the reactivation or catching up, or however you want to phrase that, either through additional COVID funds or perhaps even using our reserves, which is part of what they're there for. So I know I'm looking forward to seeing, the options for that to expand even more than what you all have already set up. And the question about summer school, what is the date? What's the last day of school, and when does summer school start?
Summer school is June 7th. Can someone look for the last day of school for me, the 20th? Yes.
And so do we have the capability, if we have a higher demand for summer school this year for all of these reasons? So summer school, more people have vaccinations, more teachers. We have the period where people sign up for that. Would we be positioned to accommodate increases in summer school?
We are very hopeful, and my short answer is yes. We're working right now. Actually, we've already begun on additional resources, including staff, how we can hire and retain for some of the best and highest quality staff for our kids, and what that plan will look like. And I'll talk to you briefly about it at the end of this as well.
Yeah, I mean, time-wise, sometimes the calendar seems to work against you, with how the timing of vaccines, the timing of the end of school. But summer school, to me, seems to be the perfect opportunity to be phasing back in, because we've gotten kind of past the vaccination hurdle.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I will speak to it because I agree.
Mr. I want to make sure that the expectations set correctly. The staff is willing to bring back in April, the April meeting, additional interventions from the student. That's what we're targeting. Our next meeting is next week. Will be some.
Oh, yes, please. I have to be honest, I've already approached Dr. Slagle just a little stressed, and will speak in the April meeting that many of those will still be in draft form, and I am getting I will need teacher feedback, I will need lots of time, so I ran into his office after our last meeting and talked about, these are great ideas, I need a little time.
That's fair.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at current plans, so administration at the high school has been working on prom and wanting to give our students opportunities while still being safe. Looking at the prom date of May 1st, still be the date that was set in the calendar and the schedule. Really looking at a promenade style. So our students would be invited to Panther Stadium to essentially walk down the red carpet on the high school football field as their names are announced over the public address system. Parents would be invited to come, sit in the stands, take pictures of the event, cheer those students on. After their names are announced, students would then be able to file, watch the rest of the students come through if they so choose, and just witness other students making that same. We thought that way they could recognize if they had a dinner opportunity or if they had another event, they could still come to what is a school function, be recognized, dress up, get pictures taken, do those things. Frankly, when we were talking to administration, in essence, the staff doesn't spend a lot of time at the dance. They come, they want the pictures, they want the opportunity, they want to be able to go out with their friends and showcase those things. We'd like to try as best we can to give them that opportunity. If we had an actual dance, I believe we might be the only ones in our large class conference to do that. Looking at the planning right now, we have been the only ones in the past, but currently we think this might be a way to recognize students in a COVID-safe environment. Students would be asked, as they're walking down the carpet, I don't believe they'd be wearing masks, but as they come back to view, then we follow COVID protocols after that. So that is what we're looking at is prom, or a prom opportunity for students. Graduation, Ray-Pec High School will host commencement at Panther Stadium again, which I'm very excited about. Thought it went very well last year, and secretly I hope that's a tradition that continues, knowing that's not just a decision for me, but it is very close to right behind my house. So I just think it's worked out well. It's been a great opportunity. So we have two ceremonies planned. Friday, May 21st at 7:30 p.m. for our seniors who are designated as our 8A students. Saturday, May 22nd at 7:30 p.m. for our seniors who are designated as B-Day students. We're looking at between 4 and 10 tickets. Obviously, as we split, we're able to have more opportunity. I don't believe that number has been set. We can wait. We're going to wait a little while looking at where we are in the county, what Cass County Health Department advises, and continue to seek feedback before we decide on that final number. Mr. Miller, did I speak correctly on that? That's what they're having lots of discussions there. We're in constant planning to do that. So summer school, I've gone into pretty good detail about the structure in the past, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But I just want to stress kind of three things, that we're going to have remediation and enrichment at all levels. We realize that is essential this summer, so that is the plan, and we're developing those in detail now. We have already increased the number of credits high school students can earn, and I think that's very important. If you had a struggling spring or fall, we absolutely want to give you the opportunity. They could take up to 4 classes for credit this summer. We might look at next summer as well. That's an incredible opportunity to catch up if you happen to have academic struggles and maybe fail some courses, and we're already communicating with folks now. So we're definitely ramping that up. And we want the board to know that there are virtual and in-person options at all levels.
So we get 2 hours this summer?
Yes, 2 full credits. Look at 2 full credits, 4 courses. Yes. We were looking at June being virtual and in person, and July being virtual. So if a student really wanted to earn a full 2 credits, they could take 2 in-person classes in June and 2 in-person or 2 virtual in July. So speaking to Ms. York's point, summer school, really, we're looking at kind of the back half of the pendulum. Remember, our district had in-person summer school, and we used it to practice a lot of the COVID-safe protocols and put in a lot of the academic structures and COVID-safe structures that we used throughout the school year and learned a lot. And I would say that was on this side of the pendulum. But as it swings back, we'd also now like to open up in some opportunities. When Cass County Health Department and our district is safe for us to do. For example, we'd love students to come back and eat in the cafeteria again and return back to those senses of normalcy during summer school. We're really looking at guidance. CDC's talking about that 6 feet maybe even being shrunk for all, which would definitely help us in lots of situations. And we can return back and do some things that might look like we are transitioning back, and we can test those structures in summer school as well. So hopefully, in a positive turn, we are swinging back to the other side of that pendulum, and we look forward to a summer school that transitions back for us. So that is my information. If you have any questions.
Question about graduation.
Yes,
So I know last year when we looked at just outside of where the students were seated, there's a lot of room on it. Likely not do an entire class with knowing that even when we were in the indoor facility, visually it was limited anyway. So
Okay,
it was nice for the grandparents to be able to see it on their TV set, still streaming it, but yet having those students be able to graduate with their friends that had.
Oh, well, it's a great point. I think it has a lot less to do with the graduates and a lot more to do with the guests. If we were very limiting in the guests, very limiting, because you're talking about 400 and some odd students, and if they just wanted to bring 10 people, as we were able to do that, you're talking about at least 4,000 guests, and then that includes all the staff, board members. We are in no way would be able to distance at all in any capacity. And with a group that large, even asking them to follow COVID-safe protocols would be a task. We think that might be a difficult task, to be truthful. Upwards of 5,000. Yes. So upwards of 5,000 people asking them to do that, I worry that that might be an impossible task for our administration. So I really believe it's more about the guests and the guest numbers. Splitting them in the groups, you can have more guests.
Dr. Ross talked a little bit about the expectations and on the dates so far, the travel and organization between the 2 dates. We've set an expectation on those dates that
I apologize.
we would hold graduations one day to the other.
Yes, yes, thank you. Another thing, it would be very difficult to change now, even if we really wanted to, and weren't as worried about the number of guests, because we told people initially when we made the announcement that this is going to be our plan. And people make a lot of, sometimes very expensive, but a lot of decisions based on those dates. So if we all of a sudden combine them, and that happened to be the date that you rented your pavilion that you can't get your deposit back, or told your entire family that you needed to have it on this date, well, then we are going to have, could be 20% of our folks very upset that we ruined whatever their plans were when we initially told them this is what we're going to do. So while we'd like to come back, 2 things, and I thank you, Dr. Slagle, that is definitely one of them, and I was talking to Mr. Miller, that was probably one of the greatest concerns. And the next is, if we have everybody, we're going to have to significantly look at limiting, and that's also very difficult.
Well, they're limited sporting events all year. So
Yeah, we have. There's always a give and take. I think what we've learned in this conversation is everything we talk about is a give and take. Okay, thank you very much.
Before we leave the challenges, I just want to reiterate what Dr. Wilbur said earlier. There are a lot of challenges coming back. None of these are insurmountable. You know, it's a risk reward type of thing. So just know that if you want us to come back for a 4-day week, these are some of the challenges that we will be attempting to overcome. And I'm sure with the level of ingenuity and innovation that we have in this room, we can figure it out. But it does come with a cost. You've also asked for 2 additional pieces of information. One is a survey amongst our parents, secondary staff members, as well as our secondary school students. We had great response, close to 4,000 responses on our survey. And for the most part, this is how it's broke down. And I know you've seen these numbers earlier. At some point, parents either after vaccination, before vaccination, about 61% would like to come back to school for more in-person learning, and 39% saying wait for the rest of the rest of the semester. On our secondary staff school members, those numbers are almost split. About 65% of our staff members want to stay hybrid for the rest of the semester, and 35% want to come back for more in-person days, either ASAP or after vaccination. And then among secondary school students, almost an even split here, pretty close. 44% want us to stay hybrid. Small majority, 56%, would like for us to come back at some point in time, either right away or after. Last piece of information you asked about in February was what are some other school districts around us doing? So what we did is we took a look at our suburban conference and the Kansas City metropolitan school districts that are in the top 2 levels of class sizes. Meaning these are the school districts that are most appropriate to compare Ray-Pec against, because those are high schools with similar enrollments. North Kansas City announced plans to come back next Monday at a 5-day in-person schedule. Lee Summit transition that the plans have been varied throughout the school year for the school district for the transition to a 4-day in-person schedule on February 8th. Park Hill looking to come back on March 22nd, 5-day in-person. Liberty slated April 5th for a 4-day in-person schedule. And Blue Springs starting the school year 5-day in-person. With that, that concludes the formal presentation. Hope to answer most of your questions you had for us in our February meeting. Myself and my staff will be happy to stand for other questions.
When you're talking about bringing the students back to 4 days, when we talk about class sizes, is that because we are trying to understand? I mean, I understand it, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the amount of students that you're going to have in those classes. Because we just split them in half, essentially.
Correct. Yep. So Mr. Miller and his team did a great job of trying to make the AV schedule work. So what you're able to have is you're able to have maybe a class of 40 into 2 sections of an AV schedule of 20 each, and you're able to social distance, physical distance, 15 and 30. And problem comes in when you bring those classes back together. 2 things happen. Number one, your physical class size can't fit the number of desks that you require. So you need to look for larger spaces or some other creative solutions that are working. Secondly, is your physical distancing is no longer a possibility. And I think Dr. Wolper ran the numbers, 7% roughly of the class sizes we're bringing together are going to have physical constraints about the number of desks and what we're going to do with overflow. I would say close to 100% of your classes are going to have physical distancing. That's no longer as possible as it is now under the hybrid situation.
Any questions, comments? So this would be a time that someone would bring forward with a motion in the direction.
I move for the Board of Education directs the superintendent to continue with the current hybrid schedule at the secondary level for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year.
Will there be a second?
Second.
Any questions? I'm sorry.
I would just like to say that I appreciate all of the input that we received in the 200 pages. And, you know, in reading through that, you know, I think all of us really have taken everything to heart. What I look at is when we kind of boiled it down to the percentages up there. When you take, I know it's not always about numbers, but when you add all three groups and how many said hybrid versus all three who said continue, it was significantly more on the state hybrid. When you look at all the groups added together, I know they all seem to kind of flip flop around, but that was something else I did want to point out. And with summer school coming up, I think that's a great opportunity to get back and have those opportunities for students to be back in a more regular environment.
Any other comments or questions before we vote? All in favor of the motion of staying hybrid through the end of this school year, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion passes 4-2. Any last comments from the board members?
You know, again, I think Bill has mentioned this before, that you have students, you have parents, you have teachers, and we want to do what's best for everybody, but sometimes there's a conflict of interest. But just for everybody to know that, you know, these decisions don't come without a lot of preparation, with the information we've been given, a lot of thought, that you know, ultimately we want to do what's best for school district.
I know I've been on the phone with a lot of the board members, discussing this nightly, daily. And I know the teachers, you know, back in August, they asked for time. They had asked for a few weeks, and we decided to go forward and start on time for the school year. And then when the Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, you know, teachers wanted to, you know, let's just end it now, and why are we going to go the next 3 weeks or whatever? And we decided to stay the course and go those weeks. And we're at a point now where, why upset everything? Let's just stay status quo. Let's get through this year. But when we come back in August and the teachers have had their vaccinations, everybody's had the chance to get their vaccinations if they want, be ready to teach and be ready to go back to school, because that's what we do.
And be ready with additional resources to get us back. I would just echo what everyone said. And they are tough decisions, and there have been compromises, I think, both ways along the way, like Billy was mentioning. We just appreciate everyone's patience and support as we get through all of this.
I would just reiterate what everybody said, but then you look at the aspect of, I don't think there was any, for everybody, I don't think there's 100% for anybody on what was right, what was wrong. My thought is just with the students and, you know, letting them get back to some sense of what they're used to, but also giving them the ability to get back with their classmates. And I know the graduation thing is already been said, already been planned, but you know, there's a way to do everything. There's a way to pivot, and there's a way to help those students see through with their class.
To say, at the end of the day, I think each of us come from a different place. We come from different backgrounds, different stories of why
we love this district and why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing. Like I said, we're never going to come to 100% conclusion. But for me, and for the amount of extra work it would cause teachers, when we talk about mental health, my son deals with anxiety and ADD, just like a lot of people. And going back to school was not in his best interest. And I know there are a lot of students in that same boat when we're talking essentially for 12 more in-person days. So at the end of the day, that's kind of what broke it down for me. Like I said, there's no good decision that's going to fit for everybody. So I just appreciate everybody's candor and thoughts.
No, Board, I know this is a tough decision on all of us. None of us ever wish that we could ever have school during a pandemic, but here we are. I think you have managed this incredibly well over the course of the year. And I think you've made a decision that we will implement, and we will get through successfully with this school year, and look forward to a strong summer and a great next year with the academic resources and place. Thank you.
Thank you to you all and all the staff and teachers.
And with that, meeting is adjourned.